Hi, everyone. Once again, happy to introduce myself. My name is Catherine Greco, and I'm an advisor for F1 and J1 students at Berkeley International Office. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today, not only as an advisor, but as a former high school teacher and as a former community college teacher. So I think I'm often asked to do the academic things here at BIO because of my past as a teacher. So I'm so thrilled for you to be coming to Berkeley, and I'm really glad to welcome you here. Let's go ahead and talk about what you can expect academically at Berkeley. Those of you who've been in the US for a little bit, some of this may seem familiar and some of it may be new. For those who were first coming to the US, more of this may be new, just depends on where you were before. But I hope that everybody will have something new that they learned from this PowerPoint. Let's see. So again, nice to meet you. My name is Catherine Greco again, and here's my email address. It's kgreco@berkeley.edu. You're certainly welcome to email me if you have any questions after this. Here's today's agenda. Notice that the first 4 things are the bulk of what we're going to discuss, and they're the things that relate to academics here at UC Berkeley. I'm going to spend just a minute or two on number 5 and number 6, which are other academic activities or opportunities, and then student organizations and employment. And the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on 5 and 6, I guess 5 is related to academics. The reason I'm spending some time on number 6 is that students often have so many questions about these topics. I just want to kind of mention them to you and mention where to find more information. And then there will be time for questions and answers. I'm the only one here from Bio today, so I don't have a partner to kind of moderate the chat with questions, but I will try to look at the chat as I finish each section to see if there are any questions that pop up. But mostly, I'd like to save the bulk of the Q&A for the end, with some exceptions. So here we go. Let's talk about academic structure and culture here at UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley's educational system is organized like this. There's a college or a school. So many of you will be associated with, since you're undergrads, one of the big 5, College of Chemistry, College of Engineering, College of Environmental Design, Rauscher College of Natural Resources, or the College of Letters and Science. A few of you may also be associated with Haas School of Business. These other schools tend to be graduate schools only. Then within each college, there are departments. So here's an example. And then within those departments is a major. So here are 2 examples. On the left, you see an example from College of Letters and Science. Within College of Letters and Science, there are a lot of different departments. One is the Department of Biological Sciences, and then there are different majors: molecular and cell biology, neurobiology, and genetics. At Letters and Science, there's also things like the Department of History, and then within that, there's Asian history, or US history, or the history of South Africa as a major, and so on. An example on the right, College of Engineering. They have then the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And notice here that the major is also the same name as a department. So notice that difference, that Letters and Science has a department name and then a major within that department that might be a different name. Whereas College of Engineering has a department name, and then the majors that come with it are the same as the department name. This just depends on how your college works. So each college at Berkeley works a little differently. But when you're talking to your friends or your colleagues or your professors about what college or school you belong to, what department you're in, and so on, just note that some colleges have more or less distinction than others, depending on how they break down their own system. What sorts of classes will I have? So you'll have a few different types, and I'd like to go through what those different classes look like and what the expectations are. When I was a high school teacher, I found that my international students really needed kind of direct coaching on the types of classes we're having. So today we're having a seminar. What does it mean for you in a seminar that's different from a day when I'm lecturing to you, or different from a day when we're working in a lab together? So let's look at what a lecture is and what the expectations are for the students in a lecture. So a lecture is led by a professor, sometimes led by a graduate student who's like a grad student assistant. They're often really, really large. This is a pre-COVID picture. I'd expect classes to be slightly smaller during COVID, or for people to wear masks during COVID. Professors are moving through a great deal of material very quickly. So they may or may not expect student participation, or they may expect some student participation, but kind of low level. Here's another type of class, a lab, studio, workshop, or field work. This is often led by a professor, again, could be a GSI, grad student instructor, and it's located in some specialized room that has special equipment. Or you're quote unquote in the field, meaning you've left the UC Berkeley campus and are going somewhere in the city. So if you're in an education program, you might be doing work in a public elementary school classroom. Or if you're in an architecture program, you might be taking a tour of architecture in San Francisco, for example. The lab courses and field and studio workshop courses really vary by size. So, how much can this lab hold? One lab might hold 5 students and one might hold 20. And then I mentioned in the field means off campus, and I gave some examples of that. You can expect a great deal of interaction here with your peers and your professor or grad student instructor. And you often will have a big lecture section and then a separate lab or studio section. So you're learning this kind of large, quick concept from your professor who's going through a ton of information. And then that huge class of several hundred students is broken into smaller chunks of 20, and you're assigned one of those labs with a set of 20 students or so. But in the lab situation, as opposed to the lecture situation, you're expected to do a lot more talking and interacting here. Seminar is another type of course you may have. It's usually led by professors again, sometimes grad student instructors, and this is a small conversation course. So you're generally seated around a large table, or you've put your desks into a circle shape. You're discussing readings, you're often discussing kind of big picture ideas in your field. So even in computer science or a STEM field that feels very much hands-on and hard sciencey, there are big questions. So what are the ethics of using CRISPR, which is a gene editing software discovered here at Berkeley, or created here at Berkeley? Or what are the limits of artificial intelligence, and what should they be? These are big questions that even in a STEM field, you should be wrestling with. But it's not really appropriate for the teacher to lecture at you about that, so much as for you all to read and discuss some ideas about that together in smaller groups and really think deeply about the real higher level goals of your field. The place to do that in a US classroom is called a seminar class. You would be expected definitely to speak up in a seminar class. Finally, you may have what's called a section class or a practice class. This is often led by a grad student instructor, a GSI, usually 20 to 30 students who it's meant to complement that big lecture class that we mentioned at the beginning. So again, a lecture class of several hundred students could be divided into several small sections of 20 to 30 students. And then the GSI goes over that tricky stuff that the professor just kind of zoomed through in detail for you and gives you problem sets, helps you work over tricky concepts and so on. A lot of individual and peer work is expected here, and participation is also usually expected. Let's talk about being responsible for your own learning. I know that you all have gotten into Berkeley, so you have definitely know already how to be responsible for your own learning. But I think that having taught overseas and then having taught at various schools in the US, I can see that how each school's culture is kind of dictates what it means to be responsible for your own learning. So here at UC Berkeley, I've got 4 tips for you that will help you be responsible for your own learning within the culture of UC Berkeley. First is understand the unit system. So Berkeley assigns a number of units to each course you're going to take. Lecture and seminar courses are usually you get 1 unit for 1 hour of class, and you can so if you take a lecture course and if you take a lecture course and it's a 2-unit course, that means that you're expecting 2 hours of that lecture class per week, plus for each of those hours 2 hours of study, like homework or just study time. So that's kind of a way to think of a unit. A unit means 1 hour of class plus 2 hours of study. For a lab or studio, 1 unit equals 3 hours of that lab time per week. So 3 hours of in-person time in the lab or studio usually. You'll get additional units for a course if the lecture has a section as well. So if you're taking a lecture course, it's 2 units, but there's also a section, it might become a 3-unit course. There's another, a professor might add another unit if they expect the course to require 3 or more hours of extra study. So if it's a very, very reading heavy class in the humanities, or a very, very intensive calculations course in a STEM field, then or if the concept load is pretty heavy, the class may be given 4 units. So you can kind of gauge how hard will a class be based on the number of units that it's designated to have. So I'm taking a 2-unit course, and I'm taking a 4-unit course. I need to expect to spend more time on that 4-unit course. Please understand units and what full-time enrollment means. So there are immigration regulations, and there's also your college regulations that require you to be enrolled full-time. But immigration and your college may define, in some cases, full-time enrollment differently. So according to immigration, for F1 and J1 undergraduates, you're required to be enrolled in at least 12 units each semester. Again, note that doesn't mean 12 classes, right? You could be taking just 3 to 5 classes, but the units that are adding up in the 3 to 5 classes must be 12 or more. However, each college has its own number of units. So for most colleges, they actually also say 12 units is the minimum. There are some colleges that have a higher threshold. For example, Letters and Science currently says that their minimum units for full-time enrollment is actually 13. So notice that F1 J1 regulation is 12. The Letters and Science minimum is 13. So because you have to meet both of those, for you to be full-time enrolled and meeting both regulations, you've got to be enrolled in 13 units. So again, when those numbers disagree, and in some cases they will, you always have to meet the higher number. I don't know of any colleges that require fewer than 12 units for the undergraduate level, but let's say your F1 regulation requires 12, and then your college only requires 10. In that case, you still have to meet the threshold of 12 because you're an F1 or J1 international student. Again, at the undergraduate level, I don't think that there's any case like that where the minimum is harsher for the international student than it is for what the college sets. But that could happen potentially, so keep that in mind. I want you to think about some different sample major requirements with different units. So let's see if I can open these and share my screen. Give me one moment. Oopsie. I may have to stop sharing with you for a moment. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Okay, thanks again for your patience. I think this will be a helpful thing for you to notice. So now I want to share my screen again. I'm going to share, instead of the PowerPoint, something different with you. This is just 3 examples from different colleges or departments here on campus. So have a look at this. Here's an example from the College of Chemistry, and they show, when you're going to get a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, they show you how many units you're expected to have in fall and spring, and of what studies you're expected to have. So you're expected to be enrolled in these 4 classes, and it will be for these numbers of units in fall and spring. Here you're expected to be enrolled in a sort of, some other required courses. Notice here, you've got an elective, so you've got some option as to what to take, but they're expecting it to be 3 to 4 units, and then 4 units again in fall. So that they're showing you also the total number of units. Notice as you move towards the 3rd and 4th year, you're kind of getting into more elective territory. So are you going to be doing, what's your specific focus in chemistry? You can take classes related to that specific focus, especially in your 3rd and 4th year, but notice that you have to take 3 to 4 units in that specific focus area. Then there are other research or breadth electives and so on as you move up in chemistry. Let's look at how history organizes itself. So here's the history department's requirements. So they have a summary of major requirements, and they just tell you how many courses you have to take. They list the number of courses and they list the number of units here as well for you. But notice that here too, you know, the organization is a little different than the College of Chemistry, but you can go to your own department's website and understand what the kind of course schedule looks like for your 4 years at Berkeley and how many units in what particular classes you're required to take things. Let's see. Oh, this is also history as well. I was trying to get you one more, which is a civil engineering. Let's see if I can get that up. I'm sorry, I must have chosen a bad link, so I'm going to stop here with these examples, but I think that you get the picture. Let me go ahead and return to the PowerPoint now and continue sharing that with you. Okay, so again, make sure that you kind of understand your major requirements and the number of units that they require per your department and your major. Next thing, know the syllabus. So many of you may know what a syllabus is, and many of you may not. So first of all, just a little history of the language. The word syllabus is Latin. So syllabus, something ending with US in Latin, is singular. And then plural of syllabus is not syllabuses, but it's syllabi, B-A-I at the end. So you may hear people talking about your syllabus or the various syllabi that you'll have over a few years' time. A syllabus is a document that you'll get at the beginning of every course, and it has basic information. So who's your professor? Who's your GSI, your grad student instructor? Where's the course going to be? What times does it meet? What are the books and other materials you need? And we'll also mention the grading policies. So one course may have a lot of homework, and they may say homework is going to be worth 10 or 20%. Other courses may say we have a lot of homework, but you're getting only 5% for it, or you're not getting any credit for the homework. You just have to study. So every course will have a different grading policy, but it should be laid out very clearly in that syllabus. Many syllabi also show the course schedule. So the topics that are going to be covered, the homeworks or exams or papers that are going to be due, and those dates. Then it has standard information such as UC Berkeley's honor code, information for students with disabilities, and info on adding and dropping courses. These are things that are kind of standard. They're things that would happen for any course in the same way. So you'll notice the last few pages of your syllabi all tend to be pretty similar. They all have the same honor code. They all have the same information for students with disabilities. They all have the same info on dropping or adding classes. But it's still helpful to note that it's there. Let's talk about some sample syllabi. And again, I'm going to pause my sharing of the screen to pull up some of these links. I think this will be instructive for you. Syllabi really differ a lot based on the discipline that you're in. So a syllabus for a sociology course is going to be very different than a syllabus for a mechanical engineering course, for example. Let's see if I can get some of these. Unfortunately, it looks like a few of these links are broken. I'm going to keep trying with a few others. One moment, please. Students, I'm so sorry. It looks like I needed to refresh these links and I didn't. So I'm not able to show you these syllabi. If you're wanting some examples, I can try to find some. If you'll like to email me, I'll put my email at the end of this again. But I think my point with this page was going to be to say that even no matter what your degree is, part of being at Berkeley is about having a holistic or well-rounded education. So you'll be taking some STEM courses and some humanities courses. You want to notice that the syllabi for those are really different. So in more of the STEM field type courses, so mechanical engineering, for example, you'd expect to see problem sets, a lot of problem sets, and what day those are due, and how you'll be graded on those problem sets. Whereas in a sociology course, you'd expect to see what big readings are due, and you want to know, like, how many pages am I responsible for next week versus the week after? And then what are you doing with those? Are you writing a research paper at some point? Or are you writing an essay or response to it? Are you expected to sit in seminar and discuss in a knowledgeable way? And will you be graded on your participation in that seminar in a way that you won't be graded in your participation, for mechanical engineering? Just notice that none of those things are right or wrong, but your professor has the ability and the leeway to say, here's how I grade in my class. And that you want to notice that how Professor A and B grade is really different, and their expectations are different. Let's see. Next thing, another way to be responsible for your own learning at UC Berkeley is to go to office hours. So every syllabus mentions the professors and the GSI's office hours, and they're required to have them. And I can say, as a former teacher, office hours are really important to educators. It's not something that we have to do that we don't like doing. We're not only required to have them, but we want to have them. It's a time for students to come and engage more deeply with the research that they're doing or the subject matter. If you can't make office hours, because you have another class at that time, or you have some logistical issue, let the professor or the GSI know that. Don't be afraid to just state clearly, I would like to come talk with you. I cannot make your office hours given the times that you've got. Can we meet at some other point? And they should generally be able to accommodate that. Please don't see office hours as either a chore that you have to do because you didn't do well in a test, or a punishment that you have to do because you're struggling in the class. Office hours in the US are not meant to be a punishment, and they're not seen by other students as you saying you can't do things or you're incapable. They are seen by professors, and that's who you're really trying to get on the good side of and impress. They are seen by professors as a way for you to really engage deeply with the topic, whether that's to say, I don't understand this thing, or I want to understand this, or whether that's to kind of push back against your challenge, or say, I really didn't agree with what you mentioned about this particular reading. I want to understand where you're coming from, and I want to also say my ideas and understand where that disconnect is. So professors and GSIs want that sort of interaction from you. And that's kind of a hallmark of American education, that we want that personal interaction from our students. Here's more information on what to do at office hours. I'm just going to pause here for a moment so you can take just a few seconds on your own to look at these 7 conversation starters for office hours. I'll let you read through these on your own. I'll give it about 10 more seconds now. As a former teacher, I can say that professors and teachers, GSIs, commonly see a ton of students in their office hours just before an exam. And at that point, students sometimes feel really frustrated, like, why'd you have office hours and you couldn't even help me? It's because at that point, the teacher or professor has 50 students in their office hours, and it's impossible to help each one on an individual level for an hour. It's not that you shouldn't go before an exam if you have questions, but I want you to broaden your sense of what office hours are for, and understand that you're going to kind of cultivate a bigger relationship with your professor and with the subject matter if you're going more frequently and not only just before a test or a quiz. Next, pay attention to your GPA, or your grade point average. The GPA is a number from 0 to 4.0. 4.0 means you're doing excellent in every course. 0 means you probably are sleeping through all your classes. The grade point average is an average of all your grades and all your courses that you've taken at a school through every semester. So as soon as you start at Berkeley, at the end of your first semester, you'll have grades, A+, A minus, B, and so on. And those translate, as you can see in this yellow box, to a certain number. And at the end of the first semester, you average those numbers, and that's your GPA. Then at the end of your second semester, you're going to have another batch of numbers. You've got your first semester numbers and your second semester numbers. Average all those together. That new number is your new GPA. The GPA is something that is standard through the US in terms of like what number is assigned to what letter grade. So it's a very easy way to say, oh, so-and-so, John has a GPA of a 3.75 at UC Berkeley. Great. Even if John is going to transfer to UCLA, UCLA understands what 3.75 means just in terms of like who John is as a student. There are many, many GPA calculators online, including one at UC Berkeley. But I will also say, at the end of your first semester, once your grades are entered in, there's a student portal called Cal Central. You're probably all familiar with it. In the academic section of that portal, as soon as your first semester is over, your grades will appear in that portal and your GPA will be calculated automatically. Here's the GPA calculator in case you're wanting to use that. Some students like to use this to say, okay, if I want a GPA of 3.85, what do I have to get in these classes? Like, what's the minimum threshold? You could do that. Certainly, you just want to do your best in all of your classes. So I wouldn't say like, oh, if you could just get away with a B+, then why shoot for an A? I wouldn't use that logic. But I think that these calculators can be helpful for you to kind of understand how well you need to do in order to reach a GPA that's your goal. Finally, be engaged. Your professors and your GSIs are here to help you. And again, a hallmark of American education is that they do want student interaction in the classroom. Before I move on, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions in the chat. The next topic is academic integrity, but let me just look at the chat and see if I can answer any particular questions. Doesn't look like there are questions. I'll wait for another 5 or 6 seconds and see if anybody writes in. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, academic integrity. So academic integrity is, a hallmark of education around the world. You didn't get to UC Berkeley without having or knowing about academic integrity. But what is exactly the flavor of academic integrity or the culture of academic integrity in the US? That may be slightly different than what it is in your home country. So let's talk about it from a US and UC Berkeley perspective. It's the idea that you are fully and accurately representing what is your work when you're turning in work. So turning in a computer science set of code, or turning in an essay or a research paper in a humanities course, that you are representing fully and accurately, this is my work. And when you are referring to previous sources, which you're certainly allowed to do, right? So you stand on the shoulders of giants. That is, you're learning from others in the past and taking their knowledge and then adding to it and kind of putting your own opinion or your own flavor onto that knowledge. You want in your work, when you turn it into anybody at UC Berkeley, to be able, for that person who reads your work, to clearly understand what's your original thought and what's not. What is stuff that you are kind of referring to or taking as a given and learning from? And you want to be able to distinctly clarify that. Academic integrity is about holding yourself accountable to yourself, to your professors and your teachers, and to the broader community in the US, because academic integrity is a thing that companies also rely on heavily here. And as F1 or J1 students, not to get too much into this, but you'll have career opportunities here in the US after you graduate. And seeing a record of academic integrity is important for those career opportunities. And it's also, of course, a way of holding yourself accountable to your families who are going to be sacrificing a lot to send you to Berkeley. Let's look a little more in detail about academic integrity. One facet of lack of integrity is called plagiarism. This is a failure to properly acknowledge the intellectual or creative work of others in your own work. So if I quote somebody, but I don't say that I'm quoting them, then it's assumed that I said that thing, but that's not the truth. Somebody else said that thing, and then I can either agree with it, disagree with it, or qualify it. But I have to say, so-and-so said it. I can't just kind of put it out there as my own thing. This happens not only in written, essays and research papers, but it also happens in the sciences. So in computer science, if you're writing code and your professor says, write a computer program that does the following thing, if you pull a program like that off the internet, or embed part of someone else's code from online, or even your friend's code into your own code, but you don't give credit where that's due, that's plagiarism. Here are some further examples of plagiarism. I'll just pause for a moment so you can read through these. Notice that plagiarism has to do with you not saying that someone else contributed to your work, that you're turning in some work and you're essentially saying, it's all mine. I thought of all of this. If that's not really the case that you thought of all of this, then in your work, you need to show, and every discipline has a proper way to show this, but you need to show in your work, here are the things that I'm getting from other people. Let's talk about other examples of academic dishonesty that might not necessarily be plagiarism, which is copying others' work, but it is also still a problem in terms of trying to do your best academic work. And let's talk through some of these. I will read some of these out loud. So if you falsify your research results to show something that you're trying to prove when really your research doesn't really show that. When you copy a friend's homework in an econ course and turn it in to get credit, that's actually a form of plagiarism. When you find and use answers to a problem set online, that's also plagiarism. Turning in work you completed previously as if it were your own new work. This is something that actually, well, I'll admit that when I was a freshman in college, I didn't know that I shouldn't do, and I ran out of time to write a paper, but I had written a paper similar to that in my senior year of high school, so I just turned it in again, and my professor said, are you kidding me? This is a high school paper. And I said, I know, I wrote it in high school, and he said, you can't do that. So, everybody has to learn these lessons sometimes, but I want you to know them before you go into it, not once you get there and have a problem with it. Allowing your friend to copy your homework. So notice this. So far, we've talked about plagiarism where you do the copying and you don't give credit for others' work. But if you are giving your work for someone to use, that is also an act of plagiarism or academic dishonesty. You can also be sanctioned at UC Berkeley for giving your work to someone else to use. Please don't do that. Other academic dishonesty, looking at a textbook or notes when you're not allowed to during a test or exam, getting answers off the internet when you're not supposed to. And then working on a friend with a homework assignment that should have been done individually. So how to avoid academic dishonesty? I think it's likely pretty clear, but there are some gray areas. So let's talk about those gray areas. Check your syllabus. Often the professor is really clear about what is or isn't acceptable in the class. So the professor may say, on the following assignments, you're welcome to collaborate with your peers in this class. On the following assignments, you're not allowed to collaborate at all. And the professor can be very clear about it. If you're not certain, it's always okay to ask beforehand. It is not okay to ask after the fact and expect that you won't be sanctioned if you've done something different than what was expected. Do a mental check, and this is a big one that I used to tell my students. Before you submit an assignment, is there anything about that assignment that you wouldn't really want to admit to your professor about the assignment and about how you completed it? Is there anything that you hope the professor won't notice, or where you think, oh, there's a gray area, I could be in the right here if the professor just sees it my way? I want to say that in that sort of space where there's a gray area and you're kind of leaning towards, well, I'm seeing within that gray area, I'm on this side of the gray area, I think I'm probably okay. You need to actually expect that your professor will be on the opposite side of the gray area, and it's your professor's opinion and not just opinion, but kind of academic clout and academic standing that matters here. You are not going to succeed, I think, generally in convincing a professor that within some kind of gray area, you're in the right, when the professor sees that you're probably not. So anytime where you have do a sort of that mental check and you think, I wouldn't really want to tell my professor exactly how I did this work, redo that work properly before you turn it in. And then, of course, take time to cite your sources properly. So give credit to the people that have helped you, the research that you're relying on, where it's due and how it's due. How do you cite your sources or give credit? That differs per department and per discipline. So a history major will be citing sources differently than an econ major, who will be citing sources differently than a digital media major. Here are some examples from the computer science 61A syllabus about academic dishonesty. I'll give you a moment to just kind of read through this on your own, and then we'll discuss it. So notice in this first paragraph that the department is saying something very clear. You're welcome to discuss all course activities with your friends and classmates as you're working on them. And you're welcome to discuss the problems with others beforehand, but do not actually share the code that solves them. So if you're writing computer code and you're thinking about, oh, what's the best tactic to take for writing this code, or what's the best way to go about this code or solving this problem, that's totally fine for you to discuss with your colleagues and your friends and your classes. Writing the code itself is not okay if you're writing it with all of your friends or with all those people, except notice this one sentence: homework and projects can be completed in pairs. I believe that means that you could write the code with one other friend in class, and you would say, Joe and I worked on this together. Now, I think there's a little bit of ambiguity here in this paragraph as to like, which homeworks can I work with Joe on and which shouldn't I? This is a point where I would be asking per assignment, can I work with my friend on this assignment to turn in code that he and I write together? Notice that the EECS is Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department. Policy and academic dishonesty has that penalties range from getting a 0 for a grade all the way up to dismissal for a second offense. So this is, a very wide-ranging set of things that could happen for academic dishonesty. And notice that they mentioned they really, really want you to get help from your TAs, that's your teaching assistant or grad student instructor, from lab assistants and instructors. And the syllabus says it here. They're here to help you succeed. That's why you go to office hours. I do see a few questions in the chat. And I see that Yuan has done great at answering some of those. So thank you so much. Where to find the syllabus for the class? It will appear when you enroll in the class. It should appear in Cal Central for you, or another site that you may have access to called Canvas. And sometimes you can actually find it on the department website. If you go to the class you're going to enroll in, the syllabus will be there as well sometimes beforehand. Or you can look at a syllabus from a past year to get a sense of how that class will go. Another question. Okay, that's the same question about seeing the syllabus. And then, is there tutoring available? Mansoor, there is, and Yuan has given you a link, and I'll be going through that in a minute as well in some more detail. Consequences of academic dishonesty. So, again, they could range from getting an F or a 0 on a paper all the way to an F or a 0 in a class, suspension or expulsion or dismissal. This does affect your ability to enroll in other schools and universities because they'll ask to see your transcripts or your record from UC Berkeley, and it will show academic dishonesty, meaning that some schools may not accept you. Again, as F1 and J1 students, you'll have the option to work here in the US after you graduate, but if your transcripts show academic dishonesty, you're less likely to get those jobs. Finally, immigration consequences. So imagine if you're an American student and you're expelled from UC Berkeley, you may be able to take a year off and then go to another school in the US. Well, as an international student, as soon as you're expelled or as soon as you cannot enroll full time, we have to end your F1 or J1 record. You have to depart the US immediately. When you are, if you are accepted back to the university after a few semesters, or you're accepted to a new university after a few semesters, you then go for a new visa appointment. And that note that we put about academic dishonesty is there and you have to explain that to the consular official. And that is really uncomfortable. They're going to ask, how should I know and trust that you're not going to do this again? It doesn't mean you cannot get a new F1 or J1 visa, but it makes it quite difficult. So I really, from not just an academic perspective, but from an immigration perspective as well, ask that you please make academic integrity a priority. Okay, I'm done with that section. I'll give about 10 seconds to see if anybody has any questions on that academic integrity, and then I'll move on to the next section here. If you've got a question, feel free to speak up or just put it in the chat.
I have a question.
Sure, Mansoor.
Can we repeat a class at UC Berkeley?
You can.
Sorry.
Sometimes this is the answer is sometimes and maybe, and it depends. So okay. As your immigration officer, I can't say what specific cases you can and can't. Mansoor, what's your major going to be?
It's going to be political science.
Wonderful. So imagine you're a political science student and I'm a mechanical engineering student and someone else is a history student. Our departments are going to have different rules and regulations about that very question, just based on their department, based on what type of course you pass or fail. So Mansoor, imagine that you don't pass a poli-sci course. Maybe you must take that one again. But if you don't pass a particular math course, maybe you don't take that one again, but you have to take a different math course. These questions are things for the department to answer individually.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions? Thank you so much for that good question, Mansoor. I think you're going to hear a lot, everybody, from different places at UC Berkeley. Oh, that's not a question I can answer, and I'm sorry. I want you to kind of make peace with getting that answer and being told where to go for who can give you the answer. So in this case, you would talk to your department about it. You're going to find that UC Berkeley is really decentralized. So we can give you really direct, specific advice on immigration. I can't give you direct academic advice for your department. I can just kind of give you an overview of what the American education system looks like. Meanwhile, if you go to your department and ask an immigration question, they'll say, whoa, I can't touch it. You've got to go to Berkeley International Office because they can see your record and they can make really specific recommendations. Okay, so let's talk academic advising and support. What's an academic advisor? There are so many, and every department names their team of advisors something different. So some colleges have a college and a department advisor. Others have a major advisor. Others have a peer advisor or a faculty advisor. Others have a few of these, but not all of these. Every department and every college is different, but generally speaking, you're going to have some people at your school and in your major who are your advisors and who help you make academic choices. So let's look a little more at what they do. So just a few examples. Colleges of Letters and Science has two types of advisors, a college advisor and a major advisor. The college advisor helps with big picture things, so course selection, recommendations, choosing a major, addressing big academic problems. The major advisor helps you with declaring a major, making sure you've gotten all of your major coursework in order, and helps you with problems with like a wait list. Like if you're majoring in poli-sci, you've got to be in the following courses in your junior year. Can they push you through the wait list to get into those classes? This organization is for College of Letters and Science. But here's Rauscher College of Natural Resources. Look at this. They've got a different set of advisors. The department advisor helps you choose a major, ensures you meet your minimums, and helps you get priority placement. So they kind of do the work of both of those advisors that I just showed you in Letters and Science. But they also have peer advisors. These are more experienced College of Natural Resources students who are willing to share their own story with you, offer advice and encouragement, and kind of give you resources to push you through your own program. Here's some College of Engineering. They have undergraduate advisors. They have engineering student service advisors. They have faculty advisors. And then they have a cafe advisor, Center for Access to Engineering Excellence. And they have peer advisors. You don't need to feel stressed that you need to know exactly who all these people are right now. But what I am trying to convey to you is that, again, there's this range of advisors. Every department and school is different. But you do have advisors of some sort at your fingertips for your department and your major. I want to talk about this. no matter what type of advisors you've got on the academic side in your department, as international students, you also have an international student advisor. So this is something that your American peers are not going to have. They're just going to have those academic advisors we talked about, just like you'll have. But whenever you make an academic choice at UC Berkeley, you're going to add a major, you're going to subtract a major, you need to drop below full-time enrollment for some medical reason or academic reason. In addition to checking in with your academic side about that, you also have to check in with us at Berkeley International Office, because F1 regulations and J1 regulations have specific parameters about what you can and cannot do. So often an academic choice or change that you're going to make could potentially affect your F1 or J1 record. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it, but it means you might need to get permission from us to do it. Or we might need to add to your record the fact that you're doing that thing. Those are fine, but this means that for you, you need to make peace with the fact that you're going to be talking to 2 advisors for almost every academic decision you make. Some academic advisor and somebody here at Bio, okay? Let's talk about other resources available to you in addition to your advisors. So somebody asked about tutoring and on-campus assistance. The Student Learning Center is huge, and they have a ton of programs to help students, particularly for undergrads. There are a lot of courses that all undergrads take. They all take some various math classes and some various writing and reading classes. Then, there are a lot of students in statistics. There are a lot of students in econ. There are a lot of students in computer science. So they have, the Student Learning Center has tutoring specifically for some of those high volume classes where a lot of undergrads are in those classes. And they'll have specific tutors there for you, both people who have majored in that and are professionals now, and students who are a few years ahead who are there to help you. I can't say enough about taking some time to check out the SLC. Berkeley also has a writing program. So regardless of what your major is, you're going to be doing some writing in some courses at Berkeley. How do you make your writing strong? And what does rhetoric in an essay in the US look like? And how does that differ from the rhetoric of an essay in your home country? So you may have mastered how to write an essay in your home country, but that may be, in some cases, really the opposite of how to write an essay here in the US. I know that I lived in Japan for a few years and had definitely mastered how to write an essay or a research paper in terms of a US kind of style and standard structure. But that was really different when I got to Japan, and I had to relearn that and kind of understand that, even though I knew all the information, in order to show that to a Japanese audience or a Japanese professor, I needed to structure my writing in Japan different than I would structure it here in the US. That same sort of shift may happen for you. And if you're struggling with that shift, or if you just want to get better at writing and clarifying what you're saying, the Berkeley Writing Program is for you. If you are going to live in a residence hall at UC Berkeley, they also have academic centers. So it's study spaces, computer resources, tech support, tutoring, and peer advising. Let's talk a little about academic probation. So what happens if things just don't go well for you and you're doing poorly after the end of a semester? So there are 2 ways to get onto academic probation. One is when your semester GPA, remember it's at that average of your courses for one semester falls below 1.5. Or if your overall cumulative GPA for all the semesters that you've been here falls below 2.0. In that case, there will be a little note on Cal Central that says academic probation. And you'll have one semester to kind of rise above that. So clear, we call it clearing AP, or kind of getting off of that by raising your GPA. Every department has different rules about what exactly puts you on AP, although generally it's what's listed here. And they have different rules about how long and what you need to do exactly to get off of or clear AP. So I won't go into detail on what those rules are, but you want to work closely with your professors, GSIs, academic advisors, and international advisors about this. I'm actually in charge of AP outreach here at Bio. And again, remember, I mentioned that whatever happens to you academically could affect you internationally, like immigration-wise as well. This is one point where if you're on academic probation for a particular semester, nothing happens with your record, your immigration record. But if you don't clear academic probation at the end of that semester, and the college dismisses you, then we have to take action against your F1 or J1 record. So we actually have some backup plans in place that can help you protect your F1 or J1 record. Even, we hope, of course, that academics kind of go better. But even if academics continue to not do well, there are ways to protect your immigration status, to end it in a way that doesn't indicate academic probation, or to transfer to another school. I won't go into those options now. I think it's not important here to go into the details, but I think it's important for you to understand generally that when you're on AP, you want to work definitely closely with everyone on your academic side to get off of AP. But you're also going to be called in by the international office. I'm usually the one who sends out those emails and says, hi, I saw from your college that you're on AP. Please come talk with us. We want to help you protect your immigration status. And so I really, really, I hope you're not an AP, but if you're in the position where you're ever on AP, please do come see us at Bio. We're here to help you with that and to walk you through the process of protecting your status in those cases. Other things about Berkeley, you'll want to learn resilience. And I know this is kind of a vague recommendation, but I think one thing in the American education system that is so hard to get your head around, even as an American, I can say this is not always easy to take. As a person who, I really tried hard academically and wanted to always do my best. It is hard to understand that part of overall academic success could mean that sometimes you're failing on things here and there. That failure is supposed to teach you some resilience. It's supposed to teach you to say, oh, I didn't do well when I tried strategy A. I need to try strategy B or C and learn from that, oh, strategy A is only good in certain circumstances, whereas strategy B or C may be better in others. So, I know this is a hard lesson to kind of hear, but Berkeley does want you to kind of understand that a failing grade or a low grade here and there is not the end of your academic career, and it can be used as a stepping stone towards overall greater success. I'll pause for a moment to see if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions. We'll move on. The next sections are pretty short. So let's talk about libraries here at UC Berkeley. The UC Berkeley library system includes a ton of libraries. You can see them here. So there are 5 main libraries that are really large, and there are 24 smaller subject specialty libraries. UC Berkeley is the 4th largest research university library system in the nation. So we've got a lot of stuff here. You can see these numbers down at the bottom and all these statistics. I actually want to say one thing about this. As a former teacher, I should say, I know that it feels very easy to sit in your dorm room or your apartment and just look up online sources these days. But I really, really want to encourage you to take advantage of these beautiful spaces. They kind of put you in an intellectual headspace to learn and to focus. I want you to consider taking actual physical books off the actual physical shelves as if it's 1980 again. And really, using the physical materials, because sometimes part of the way we learn is by actually having a tactile experience with the thing we're studying. Not always, and as we become more and more digital, maybe that's less and less important, but I still think that there's something important about that tactile sensation of learning with an actual book or with an actual scholarly journal in hand. So I really, really want to encourage you to take advantage of the physical spaces and the physical objects in this library system, of course, in addition to the millions and millions of online resources that the library offers. OSCE-CAT, actually, I think this is a little out of date. OSCE-CAT is no longer the system that the UC Berkeley uses, so I'm sorry I didn't update this. There's a new UC Berkeley library catalog, but you type in keywords for something you're looking for, and you can do a search. This is a sort of Google, but for the UC Berkeley library system. The library also has databases, so they cannot possibly physically hold all the information in the world, but they can hold a good amount of information if they're able to hold it digitally. And sometimes there's a company or another research group or another university that holds a physical thing, and UC Berkeley pays for access to that. So that if they're paying for access to those resources, from some different group or company or organization, that set of resources is called a database. So you can look at different databases. Notice, here's, I just, as an example in the screenshot, I looked up African studies, dissertations and theses, and then all vendors, so all different types of organizations. And then we've got a few different ones. Here's an Arabic database. Here's a Middle Eastern and Central Asian Studies database. So I really, really recommend, especially as you get into your 3rd and 4th year and you're starting to really specialize in your field, that you look at these databases. E-journals are similar. So, a lot of magazines and research journals used to be in print form. Now, many of them are only in online form, but you can't just access them as an average person without paying thousands of dollars. The library has paid that fee for you and has a license to issue you the ability to see that journal while you're a student here. You can search journals as well. The library also has citation tools. So I mentioned to you that depending on what your field is, you may be citing sources differently. You can see here there's an APA style guide, an MLA style guide, a Chicago style guide, and an AMA quick style guide. Most of these are for the humanities, including the quote unquote soft sciences like econ. But if you're an English major, you'll be using MLA. If you're a social sciences major, like an education major, you'll be using the APA style of citation, slightly different. Don't worry too much about how do you know which one you're going to use. Your professors in your first classes in your first semester are going to tell you which of these to use, but then how, okay, so now that you're going to be using Chicago style citation, but what does it mean and how do you do it? Click here for a ton of examples. Also, this is a great time to go to the Writing Center or the Student Learning Center to kind of get some assistance with citation. Finally, I've shown you a lot of online resources, but I just want to say another plug for the actual physical presence of these spaces and these great books is the physical actual people who run these libraries, librarians. They are a wealth of knowledge and they really love helping you dig deep and find something specific. So you can go to them and say, I'm doing research on a particular topic, or I'm looking for books on a really specifically narrowly focused thing. Books published about China and the such and such dynasty from year blank to blank and how that dynasty played a role in food culture. I mean, isn't that unusual? Wouldn't that be strange if you could find that? But certainly that must exist. And these librarians will love to do that research for you and kind of dig deep and say, I found 4 things on food culture in the such and such dynasty in these particular years. And they'll find that for you and hand you those things. I can't say enough about how helpful librarians are. So please don't hesitate to schedule a time to meet with a librarian and ask them for help with your research. Any questions on libraries? Okay, let's talk. Final section on academics is the other academic opportunities section. UC Berkeley, as you probably know, required terms of study are fall and spring, but in summer you have the option to study. You don't have to usually, but you can, and you can take just one course. You can take a lot of courses. UC Berkeley summer sessions offers over 600 courses. If you are trying to complete your breadth requirements, so let's say you're a history major, but you need to take a math and science course, you could take it over the summer where you might want to just kind of focus only on that alone. For example, you could take summer courses in order to make your fall or spring course load lighter. I want to say something about that. If you're thinking, ooh, okay, I've got to take 12 units in fall, but let me take 3 of those units in summer, so that then I only have to take 9 in fall. That's not quite how that's going to work, because remember, you must hit the 12-unit threshold as an F1 or J1 student. But what this bullet point is saying is, for example, instead of taking in fall 2 or 3 classes that are each 4 units, you might take one of those 4-unit classes in the summer, and then take a few lighter load courses, so a few courses that are 2 or so units each in the fall, and then balance those with 1 or 2 hard courses in the fall. So in that way, you still need to meet your 12-unit threshold in fall and spring, but you can kind of balance your load or lighten the load per course by taking some classes in summer. Some students like to take summer courses so that they can graduate early. Note that in the summer you pay per session. or per unit, not per term. So in fall and spring, you pay a particular rate no matter how many or how few classes you're in, no matter how many units you're in. In summer, you pay for a course per unit. Sometimes that makes some financial sense. Sometimes it doesn't. But it'll depend on your program, on what's on offer in the summer and so on, but it's something to consider. Don't expect that all of your major requirement courses will be offered during the summer, but sometimes some will be. Check in with an academic advisor before joining a summer course, because sometimes the summer course and the fall-spring version of the course are significantly different, and it may be that you're required to take it in fall or spring. You have probably heard about study abroad options, and in fact, you'll be studying abroad for 4 years here at Berkeley. But a lot of schools in the U.S. offer a study or work abroad program for 1 semester or 1 year. You, as international students, are able to do it. So let's say you're a student from France, and you want to study abroad in Mexico. You could do it. Or let's say you're a student from China, and you want to work abroad in Namibia. You could do it. So UC Berkeley has a program called the UC EAP, Education Abroad Program, and there's also a program at Berkeley called Berkeley Global Internships. You can do those things as an F1 or J1 international student. This is absolutely something where if you're thinking about doing this, you want to talk not only to your academic side, but definitely to the immigration side, to us at Bio as well. But these things often work out very well for international students, so we encourage you to look into these opportunities and to take them. We have international students taking these opportunities every single semester. Berkeley is a top research university, and so there are a lot of research opportunities. Even for undergrads, there are a lot of research opportunities. So I encourage you to look into these. Sometimes if you're going to be paid for some research opportunities, or if you're going to be working off campus for those research opportunities, these are moments when you want to come talk to us at Bio to make sure that you're authorized to do that. Let's see, any questions on that section?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm a foreign student from France, and I was planning to do the thing called UCDC, meaning that,
Yes.
I can do 1 semester in DC would be really beneficial because I'm a political science major. As far as status, do we have to be citizen of the United States to
No,
intern
a lot of our
in?
F1, no, a
Oh,
lot of
sorry.
our
Go
F1
ahead.
and J1 students actually do the UCDC program. So just again, to clarify for those who don't know, the UCDC means that it's UC Berkeley or UC, University of California students going to Washington, D.C. for 1 semester to kind of study U.S. politics. This is a really, really great choice for our political science majors, our other majors related to politics. So Mansour, I'm so glad that you're thinking of doing it. You do not have to be a U.S. citizen to do that. You have to be a UC student. Do come talk with us. You don't need authorization per se to study in Washington, D.C. while you're a UC Berkeley student, but there may be other considerations along the edges of that where we want to say, oh, but there are some things to think about immigration-wise in terms of your timing or the logistics for doing UCDC. But absolutely, it's a program that's, our international students do it every year.
Okay, and do you had international student going to DC to work alongside congressmen or congresswomen?
We do.
Does that ever happen?
We do. When we get into any issues of work, like actual employment, then we definitely need to talk to our international students, because you, different than an American student, will need some authorization from us to have that job. That's totally fine. We can authorize you to do those things, but you have to come talk with us. You shouldn't be working without getting Bio's permission first.
All right. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Jacob, you said, are you getting units if you study abroad? That's a good academic question. I believe you are. I believe the UC EAP, Education Abroad Program, is set up so that you're at Berkeley and you're going to be transferring to some university in Japan, say. My understanding is that when you transfer to Japan, you're taking particular classes that will transfer back to you at Berkeley. But I don't know the details of that. And that may be different if you're a Berkeley civil engineering major or a Berkeley African American Studies major. You may be able to take different courses in Japan, some of which do and some of which do not transfer back to your major. This is another point where you want to talk to your academic advisors and UC EAP about this. But UC EAP is a huge and robust, very strong program, and they can answer these questions for you and kind of guide you and say, oh, you need to narrow your focus to these universities if you want credits to come back, or you need to narrow your focus to these topics if you want credits to come back to you at Berkeley. Okay, everybody, we're kind of done with the academic section, but I think a lot of students have questions about these next topics, so I'll run through them quickly. How can I get involved? So every semester at the beginning of the school year, and actually the beginning of the semester, is Calapalooza. Calapalooza is a big fair on the main plaza in UC Berkeley. It's called Sprawl Plaza. It's just a big open air walkway, and you'll see clubs and student organizations with tables lined up on either side. There'll be music and a lot of energy, and you can just go sign up for clubs or just go learn about them and get information from them. And there's no harm in signing up for a lot of clubs and then deciding, I only want to do 2 of these. So, you know, take advantage of Calapalooza. DCAL. DCAL means Democratic Cal, UC Berkeley. These are student-led courses, but the student has written a clear syllabus, has some expertise or knowledge in the topic, and has been approved by the UC Berkeley to give a 1 or 2 unit course for credit. These are often kind of really specific topics. So, you know, the punk music scene in Germany in 1985, for example, I mean, it's very specific. Or Harry Potter and the connection to philosophy today. It's very, very, very specific topics, but it's kind of a cool way to get to know, you know, some of these nuanced people at UC Berkeley. Cal Link here is a sort of a Google for anything that's clubs or organizations at UC Berkeley. So you can type in the type of club or organization you're interested in. Is it academic? Is it fraternal? Is it environmental? Is it a volunteer organization? Is it a sports club? And then they'll prepare a list for you of clubs that relate to the thing you've typed in. Our gyms here at UC Berkeley, our gymnasiums, are called the recreational sports facilities. And you can look up all sorts of classes and things that happen at the gyms at the Rec Sports website. And then different departments have their own clubs and organizations. So if you're a music major, there will be some different music honor societies that you might join, or some different music clubs that you might join. And Facebook you can look up Facebook groups at Berkeley to also find different clubs. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities at Berkeley. So if you look up publicservice.berkeley.edu, that's a one-stop for you to learn about the various different ways to volunteer as a UC Berkeley student in the Berkeley area. There are a ton of, you know, sports that are big here at UC Berkeley. You know, big career fairs. There's Big Give Day, which is a kind of a fundraising day, and so on, for you to take part in. Final thing, this is another just piece of extra information. Students always want to know about how to get a job and so on. So 2 things to know. If you're looking to explore careers or looking for advice on how to get a job, like what should I say in an interview, or what should my resume look like, or what should my cover letter look like, or are there career workshops, are there career fairs I should go to, can I network with someone? These are questions for the Career Center. And there are several Career Center advisors. You as Berkeley students have free access to the Career Center. I will say though, the woman pictured here, Jing Han, is particularly interested in helping international students. She herself used to be international, and so she really understands that there may be some cultural translation. You know, as I mentioned earlier, you may be really, really proficient in your own country in terms of how to get a job and how to present yourself in an interview. But that may be really different than how to present yourself in the US. Even though you have the skills appropriate for that job, there may be something about presentation or presenting your skills in a US resume or a US cover letter or at a networking event. And Jing can kind of help you through those things. The other Career Center advisors are also able to do that. However, anytime you're looking to do work, we request and require that you come speak with us at Berkeley, or at Berkeley International Office. This is one of the main things that we see F1 and J1 students kind of have trouble with, is they get a job and they get a job offer, and then at the last second they come check with us to see if they're eligible to work, or if they need work authorization. And sometimes they're authorized and it's fine. Sometimes we can prepare authorization quickly, but other times the student is simply not allowed to work under particular circumstances, and that's just the federal regulations and the requirements of the F1 or J1 visa. And then we have to give you bad news and say, I'm so sorry you got this dream job, you cannot do it. And that's a really hard conversation to have. So I want you, before you get into that spot, to look at our website here. And you can just go to our Berkeley bio website and then search employment, and pull up the proper types of employment for your visa status and look at those, get a sense of your employment options, and then come talk with us before you take a job. Finally, the middle section here, Handshake is a website that once you're a student, you'll have access to, and it's a sort of search engine for all sorts of jobs. So employers around the country want to hire Berkeley students for internships over the summer, or maybe want to hire them after they graduate to work for a few years. And you can find those employers, in a lot of ways, but particularly through Handshake. It's a sort of LinkedIn, but for Berkeley students only. So these are companies that particularly wanted to work with Berkeley students. Any questions here? I see, is there a writing center that helps with essay writing at Cal? Yes, so Student Learning Center will help you with writing generally and can maybe look over essays and point out some spots to revise. And then if you're wanting broader assistance with writing, so if you've gotten a few low grades in your writing and you realize, oh wow, my writing is just not great in English yet, I need to do better, then I would recommend that Student Writing Center to you, and they'll have longer programs where you work with them for a few months at a time to improve your writing. Do we have access to Handshake already? Mansoor, I'm not sure. I bet you don't. I bet you won't until you're in fall semester, but I'm not sure. Anything else I can answer if you want to speak up, or if you want to put your question into the chat? Okay, everybody, thank you so much for your time and your patience today. Have a great rest of your summer, and we're really, really looking forward to welcoming you to UC Berkeley and to California in the Bay Area. It's a great place to be. Dress in layers. It's colder here than in Southern California, so please prepare to be a little colder than you might expect for California. And we're really looking forward to having you here. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.